بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد عن أبي يحيى صهيب بن سنان قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم عجبا لأمر المؤمن إن أمره كله خير وليس ذلك لأحد إلا للمؤمن إن أصابته سراء شكر فكان خيرا له وإن أصابته ضراء صبر فكان خيرا له أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي رب زدني علما رب يسر ولا تعسر وتمم بالخير وبك نستعين يا فتاح اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا ورزقا واسعا وحلالا طيبا وعملا متقبلا وشفاء من كل داء اللهم اغفر لنا وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات ربنا أفرغ علينا صبرا وتوفنا مسلمين يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على دينك يا مصرف القلوب صرف قلوبنا على طاعتك. We continue the chapter of Sabr. The third hadith is narrated by Abu Yahya Suhaib ibn Sinan al-Rumi radiyallahu anhu. In our today's gathering, inshallah, we will discuss briefly about the life of Suhaib radiyallahu anhu. So his name is Suhaib, the father's name is Sinan, the title is Abu Yahya, and the mother's name is Salma. In the collection of ahadith, approximately we have 30 ahadith narrated by the Suhaib radiyallahu anhu. He passed away around the age of 72 in Madinatul Munawwarah and is also buried in Jannatul Baqiyah. The title has been given is Abu Yahya by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he is known as Suhaib al-Rumi, the Roman. Where did this al-Rumi come from? Inshallah, we will discuss. Suhaib radiallahu anhu is one of those first 7 individuals, 7 Sahabas who publicly practice on Islam. They displaced the Iman from those 7 individuals at the beginning of Islam. And Suhaib radiallahu anhu, he had a great character. His journey to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was also unique. Like we also have Salman Farsi radiallahu anhu from Persia. We also have a unique story of Salman radiallahu anhu, the Roman. Now Suhaib radiallahu anhu, the Rumi. Suhaib radiallahu anhu, he is actually an Arab. He is known as Rumi, the Roman, but he is actually an Arab. His father, the name was Sinan, the son of Malik. He was in Arabia. He was very intelligent. He was very sharp. He was very clever. And they used to travel for business from Saudi from Hijaz to Sham, and they would travel to different areas. So at that time, the Persian Empire, the king was Kisra. He noticed the intelligence of his father Sinan. So he appointed him to govern a city on behalf of Kisra in Persia. So he made him the governor of a city by the name of Al-Ubulla, which is now part of Basra in Iraq. So an Arab who was made a governor in Persia. So this is how the father ended up in Persia. And this is where Suhaib radiallahu anhu was born. So he was an Arab child living in Persia, born in Persia. And then what happened was, around the age of 5, with his mother, they had traveled to a place where Yunus alayhi salatu wasalam is from. Again, this is part of Iraq, Nineveh. And so the mother had took Suhaib radiallahu anhu there for a picnic, for a day out. And whilst they were there, the Roman soldiers, they attacked the city and they took some captives in large number. That also included Suhaib radiallahu anhu and his mother. However, when this happened, they were separated. So mother was taken in one direction, Suhaib radiallahu anhu is taken in another direction. This was at the age of around 5. The mother herself is also sold in the market as a slave, and Suhaib radiallahu anhu is also sold as in the market as a slave. So from the around age of 5, for around 20 years, this is how he lived. He was sold from one master to another, and he would be treated as a slave in the Roman Empire now. And he's growing up there. Because of growing up there, he's picked up the language. He's lost his mother tongue, the Arabic. He's forgotten that language. He's picked up Greek from the Romans there, and growing in that environment, he looked like a Roman kid as well. So this is where he got the title Suhaib al-Rumi, Suhaib the Roman from. So originally he's from Arabia, but the father became the governor in Persia. He was kidnapped and he was a captive, traveled to Rome, where he lived, and he grew up there. So he was as though he's from Rome. So he grew up in Rome, and whilst he was there, he was for around 20 years as a slave, traveling from one master to another. In that land, there were a few churches there. So he found out that in the church, the Pope, they were discussing about the arrival of the final prophet in Makkah al-Mukarramah, in his homeland. So he was very interested, because remember, whilst he was in Persia, he saw those who used to worship there. Whilst he was under the Roman Empire, he saw what they were worshipping there as well. So he didn't exactly have any religion. He had seen different things. So he thought that, Makkah al-Mukarramah is a place where I want to travel. Now there could be two reasons why he wanted to travel there. One is because he found out that the final prophet is going to arrive there. So that could be one reason why he wanted to escape from the Roman Empire and travel to Makkah al-Mukarramah. Or the second reason why he wanted to escape there was because of the place Makkah was known as a place of asylum, of refuge. So they were known, the Makkah al-Mukarramah people used to travel there, pilgrimage there, and they used to take asylum and refuge there. So he thought, let me escape from there and take refuge there. So somehow he managed to escape. When he arrived in Makkah al-Mukarramah, according to the books, Abdullah ibn Jad'an radiallahu anhu. Abdullah ibn Jad'an radiallahu anhu, he was a cousin brother of Rasulullah, of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. Now before Islam, Abdullah ibn Jad'an radiallahu anhu, he had a massive role. Before Islam, there was an agreement, there was a treaty known as Hilful Fudul. Now what happened was, there was a movement that also included Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he was one of the youngest participants in this agreement. And their role was to support any person who didn't have any tribe, or who didn't have any other sort of protection. So they would support such individuals. So Abdullah ibn Jad'an radiallahu anhu, the agreement took place in his house, and most of the finance was supported by him. So he used to support this movement. So when Suhaib radiallahu anhu came to Makkah al-Mukarramah, Abdullah ibn Jad'an radiallahu anhu took him either as a slave or under the protection of Hilful Fudul. So now Suhaib radiallahu anhu al-Rumi, is staying with Abdullah ibn Jad'an radiallahu anhu. And at the same time, Abdullah ibn Jad'an radiallahu anhu was a very wealthy person. He was a merchant, he was a very rich business person. So Suhaib radiallahu anhu al-Rumi is staying with Abdullah ibn Jad'an radiallahu anhu, around the age of 25, 27, you can say, very young, staying in the company of this great merchant. He also picked up and he learned how to do business, and he became very skillful. So even in the markets of Arabia, he was known. He became very famous. And like this, Suhaib al-Rumi radiallahu anhu also became very wealthy. He became very known merchant. So Abdullah ibn Jad'an radiallahu anhu took Suhaib radiallahu anhu in his protection. Now at that time, the custom was that if he had a family, if he had a tribe, in one way or the other, you'd be protected. So if anything was to happen, the tribe and the family would come in your support and would come and help you. But Suhaib radiallahu anhu, even though originally he is from Arabia, but when he came back, he didn't have any tribe, he didn't have any clan, he didn't have any family. So in one way, he's not very secure, he's not very safe. So if anything was to happen to him or to his wealth, in that aspect, nobody would be there to support him and nobody would be there to help him. So anyway, he's living in under the protection of Abdullah ibn Jad'an radiallahu anhu, and he's learned business and he became a very wealthy person and very wealthy business person. Some time went by and Abdullah ibn Jad'an radiallahu anhu passed away. Now he passed away. Now before Islam, there are two reasons why Abdullah ibn Jad'an Hadrat Suhaib radiallahu anhu came in contact with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One is because possibly in the agreement, in the Hilf al-Fudul, when Prophet ﷺ was also part of that agreement, maybe there was a connection and friendship built there. Or the second thing was Suhaib radiallahu anhu was in the markets of Makkatul Mukarramah, and Rasulullah ﷺ was also in this trading and in this business as well. So it's possible they came into connection somewhere. So from before Islam, Suhaib radiallahu anhu already knew the character of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He had already heard of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So once what happened was, whilst he was in the marketplaces, there was a rumor going around, there was some murmurs and some talk going around that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has received prophethood and he's claiming to be a prophet. And he's inviting people towards a new religion. If you remember going backwards, the Suhaib radiallahu anhu didn't have any particular religion. He didn't worship anything. No fire, no idol, nothing at all. He wasn't worshipping anything. So this made him interested that, what is the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam who I already know preaching and what is he inviting towards? So one day he found out that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the beginning of Islam, the place where he used to teach was in the house of Arqam radiallahu anhu. So Darul Arqam, the first madrasa of Islam. So Suhaib radiallahu anhu found out that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is in this house and teaching about this new religion and about this new faith. So one day he decided to go and see what's happening. Now here you can just imagine Suhaib radiallahu anhu is coming in this one direction, and on the other side another early Muslim, early Sahabi, Ammar bin Yasir radiallahu anhu, is also coming in this direction, and both of them meet at the door of Arqam radiallahu anhu. They knew each other somewhere here and there, but when they met each other, they didn't disclose, they didn't give the reason why they've come immediately. So Ammar bin Yasir radiallahu anhu is looking at Suhaib, and he's saying that, what are you doing here? Why have you come here? So Suhaib radiallahu anhu, instead of giving the answer, he's asking them, what are you doing here? But they didn't want to give the reason why, because obviously he wasn't safe at that time. So then they gave the answer to each other that we've heard about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam inviting us towards this religion and this new faith. So we want to know what is this? What is he talking about? So they both there at the same time. They knock on the door. Arqam radiallahu anhu opens the door, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is inside. So they both enter, and they're inside. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam give them da'wat about Islam. They've entered as people without faith, and they've come out as believers. They've accepted Islam in this gathering, in this majlis, and in this occasion, and they both leave with Islam and with the belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now remember, from the beginning of Islam, those poor Sahabas, those weak Sahabas, they were tortured in different ways. In the sun, whipped, dehydrated, starved, drugged, everything used to happen. And as we just mentioned, that if somebody had a clan or family, they would be very careful of how much they would torture. But Suhaib radiallahu anhu didn't have that support, didn't have any clan, didn't have any family. So he would be tortured. Any person would come and do anything they want. And Suhaib radiallahu anhu went through this difficult moment and through this torture. A time went by, about 13 years later, when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was given the permission from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow the Sahaba radiallahu anhu ajma'in to travel and migrate to Madinatul Munawwarah. So Suhaib radiallahu anhu, remember, for 13 years he's lived in Makkatul Mukarramah, and before that as well he's already in Makkah. Even though he was a wealthy merchant, but they didn't care at that time. They used to torture him, and they used to give difficulties and do whatever they wanted. So at the time of migration, at the time of Hijrat, the Sahaba radiallahu anhu ajma'een, they were able to travel in their families and their clans and tribes, and they left towards Madinatul Munawwara. Suhaib radiallahu anhu, until now, he's still a slave. He doesn't have any family, he doesn't have support. Yes, being a Muslim, he has some support, but the tribal family and support that they had, he didn't have that. So Suhaib radiallahu anhu, he's in a limbo here, he's in a difficult moment that what do I do? He's still a slave and he's got no support. He's looking for a moment to leave. But Quraysh had tied him up and they wouldn't allow him, and there would always be somebody watching over him. They wouldn't allow him to leave. So he himself, he said that, look, I was locked up, other companions had left, and Rasulullah had decided to migrate. And I was hoping that I would be able to also migrate with Rasulullah, but I was locked up and I wasn't able to go. The Quraysh had blocked my path and I wasn't able to leave. So Prophet ﷺ, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu have left. I remember they left Ali radiallahu anhu behind in the house of Rasulullah ﷺ. So next day he could return the trusts and the wealth that Prophet ﷺ had of others. So Ali radiallahu anhu had also remained in Makkatul Mukarramah. So Suhaib radiallahu anhu, he's in Makkatul Mukarramah tied up, and he's looking for opportunities to escape and migrate to Madinatul Munawwara. He was very clever. So one day what he did, he decided that to pretend to have diarrhea. He pretended to have diarrhea. So he's there holding his stomach, standing up, sitting down and moving around and this. So the guards who were there from Quraysh, they ignored him, and he kept insisting that I need to go. So they let him go, come back, and he do the same thing a couple of times. They did that a couple of times until they got fed up of him. So one of the times they let him go. That, they allowed him, and they weren't watching him. They didn't look over what he's doing. So he took the opportunity and he ran. He escaped. Now remember, Suhaib radiallahu anhu was a merchant. He was very wealthy. Knowing that this was going to happen, before this he hid his wealth. He buried it somewhere. So when he escaped when he was being tied up, he escaped. The guards who were there, they realized that Suhaib radiallahu anhu is not there. So they went out in search of him. By that time, he had left the outskirts of Makkatul Mukarramah and he was on top of the mountain. Now when he was on top of the mountain, he realized that they have noticed and they found me. So he stopped and he said to the group of Quraysh who were there at the bottom, around 20-25, and he said to them, look, I've got two options here. One option is that, look, we'll come to an agreement, I'll give you my wealth and you don't go. Just let me free, let me go and let me just leave. I'll give you all the wealth that I've got, I'll give it to you. Or the second option is that if you want to play games with me, you know that I'm a very good archer. I'm very good with this. So I've got the loads of arrows here and I've got a sword. I'll throw my arrows at you and one by one I'll kill you. And if I need to come down with the sword, I'll come and either you die or I die. So there's two options here. So the group of Quraysh who had come, they thought that, we'll take the first option, which is a safe option. We'll tell us where it is and you leave. So Suhaib radiallahu anhu, he told them everything that where his wealth was buried. Where the wealth was buried, he gave them the locations and he told them, look, if you go here, this. And Suhaib radiallahu anhu, without anything, even though he was a wealthy merchant, he's leaving Makkatul Mukarramah, going towards Madinatul Munawwara without anything in his possession. And on his own, he's living on his own. After some time, it's around 460 odd kilometers from Makkatul Mukarramah to Madinatul Munawwara, couple of days journey. So when he reached Masjid al-Quba, where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was, in a similar time, Hadrat Ali radiallahu anhu also reached at that time. Ali radiallahu anhu also reached at the similar time. They may have took a different route, but they reached Masjid al-Quba at the similar time. Ali radiallahu anhu, at that time when he reached, his feet had become all wounded and he had full of blisters because he came walking. He didn't have any means of transport. He came walking. So Ali radiallahu anhu has also come there. Suhaib radiallahu anhu has also reached Masjid al-Quba. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, seeing the arrival of Suhaib radiallahu anhu, he says to the Suhaib radiallahu anhu that Rabih al-Bay' ya Abu Yahya, Rabih al-bay'u, Rabih al-bay'u. That means that the transaction that you did is very profitable, is very beneficial. What transaction? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, before he even arrived to Masjid al-Mukarramah, revealed a verse on behalf of Hazrat Suhaib radiallahu anhu, according to one tafsir, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَشْرِي نَفْسَهُ ابْتِغَاءَ مَرْضَاتِ اللَّهِ, that there are some individuals who have done this transaction, who have sold whatever they had for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you can imagine the sacrifice he went through, that struggle that he went through at that time, that all the wealth he had, all the business he had, and all that he had gathered, he gave everything away just for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So here Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying to him, Rabih al-bay'u, ya Rabih al-bay'u, that the transaction that you've done is very profitable, is very beneficial for yourself. This is how Suhaib radiallahu anhu reached Madinatul Munawwara, and he was staying in Madinatul Munawwara. And at that time there was another incident that took place. He lived in Madinatul Munawwara in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and every battle that took place, he also took part. In the time of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he was there. In the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, he was also there. And in the time of Uthman radiallahu anhu, he was there. And in his time, he passed away. However, before that, inshallah, there was one or two things that we're going to mention about Suhaib radiallahu anhu. So what we learn from the life of Suhaib radiallahu anhu, that the sacrifice and the mujahada and the struggle Sahaba radiallahu anhu have given for the sake of the deen is, you can't imagine and you can't compare at all. They gave everything they had just for the sake of the deen. We also need to look at these great Sahabas as a role model for us, that whatever we can also sacrifice for the sake of the deen, we have to do and we will do. And inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in return, even in this world, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will elevate us, and in the hereafter, as he says here, Rabih al-bay'u, that this transaction how you have done is beneficial, meaning on the day of judgment, people will be in difficulty, they will be sweating, but Suhaib radiallahu anhu will be enjoying himself. Why? Because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has given the guarantee that this transaction you've done is definitely beneficial. So in the hereafter, Suhaib radiallahu anhu will be enjoying it. He will see the reward that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kept for him in the hereafter because of that transaction that he did. Inshallah, we'll continue briefly the few points about Suhaib radiallahu anhu, and then we'll discuss the hadith that he narrates in the chapter of Sabr. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the correct understanding, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the ability to study the lives of the Sahaba radiallahu anhu majma'een and other pious predecessors, and make them a role model for us, and where we also understand and that the taklif and the mujahada and the struggle that have been given for the sake of the deen, and we also be part of those who also give sacrifices for the deen. Allahumma ameen. Subhanallah bihamdihi, subhanakallah wa bihamdik. أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. سبحان ربك رب العزة ما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين برحمتك يا أرحم.